Hello and welcome once again to another episode of the Foundry Lab, where ideas become power and power becomes the engine for African transformation. This week we are wrapping up July by asking, where do we stand, what's shifting, what's stagnant, and what does it all mean for African youth, creatives, entrepreneurs, and builders of this continent. Forgive me, I am not feeling well, and I am going to try and make this episode as short as I can because every time I speak, my voice hurts. So please bear with me. Before we get into the agenda for today, I just want to read a couple of comments from the previous video that meant a lot to me, especially, there were two, because y'all are not commenting. Another trend that we've been seeing, we've gotten 34 views consistently over the past 3 videos. So that's something. Thank you so much for the people that keep on coming back week after week to just consume our content and just learn with us and build with us. We highly appreciate your time. Without any further ado, the comment Pro King was like, I love the new edits with the fire emoji. I'm glad somebody noticed. Well, I'm sure more than one person noticed, but only one got to comment. So please do comment and share your thoughts and everything that we are doing and what we can do better moving forward. And then the comment that really hit home, man, and really just moved me and just encouraged me to just continue going and doing this thing is by Usomi Konti or Konchi. I'm not entirely sure. My apologies for butchering your surname. She says, I honestly think you've been doing well so far. Remember that starting something new, you learn and unlearn. You get to grow and eventually become a master at what you do. It's refreshing to see young adults caring about the future of our country, especially in these days where most people don't really care and just interested in drinking weekend in and weekend out. This podcast is going far. From your mouth to God's ears, my sister. We thank you so much. That really means a lot. Just knowing that, okay, people see what we are doing and that you guys appreciate the content. So thank you so much, Pro King and Usomi. So what you can expect in today's episode is key political, and what we are getting to is key political and economic stories from July across Africa, how these events reveal structural issues, the Foundry principle of the week or word of the week, a forecast into next month's theme. And we'll get into that because there's a particular topic that we want to have recurring now, that we just want to theme the rest of the year and the rest of the year's podcast episodes. Just theme them around a particular topic that we'll get to at the end of this episode. So please do stick around. What I'm introducing now, there's a couple of segments, and we'll get into them as we go. But the one that we're going to get into now, the very first one, is me just sharing headlines, the biggest headlines that we've seen in the continent and in our country throughout the month of June. So each and every month, we're going to have a month wrap, the month wrapped, like in terms of all the biggest headlines that are still in line with the Foundry vision. So there's a couple of stuff that have happened this month on the continent, and just for the sake of time, I just chose 3. So let's get into it. Kenya's youth have been shaking the table. The Gen Z-led protest against the proposed tax hikes in Ruto's finance bill caught global attention. These weren't just about money, they were about accountability, representation, and what leadership should look like in post-colonial African state. And then we head over to South Africa. This month, South Africa's role in BRICS continued to deepen as new trade initiatives and alternative currency discussions made headlines. So there's a lot that has been happening. I don't know if you follow the BRICS, but I'd recommend that you do. And one of the things, it's just nice to have that information and know exactly what direction your country is taking and what position it is taking within big tables, So I think one thing that we should know that has come out of the BRICS wasn't a BRICS summit, but the BRICS meeting, it was that BRICS has given South Africa a lifeline, and that is in the form of 7 billion rand that is going towards infrastructure, road infrastructure. So we will be following that story and seeing how that turns out, because we know our country, 7 billion might hit the bank, but we know only 2 billion perhaps is gonna get to doing what it's actually supposed to be doing. Over in Nigeria, Nigeria's inflation is biting hard. The naira continues to tumble and Tinubu's administration is under fire. Reforms are promised, but lived experiences tell a different story. And I guess many countries in Africa, they resonate with this or relate with this. The fact that politicians come and they promise us all these things, but the lived experiences are always in heavy contrast with what they are actually saying. That's also something that we need to look into, the promises that are being made. And yeah, it goes back to accountability, because now if you promise us this, we should be able to come back and say, where's this? What are the systems that have been put in place to... I don't know of any system that has been put in place besides just for normal citizens to hold government accountable, to hold leaders accountable. It's always through political voices and political parties. And I feel like that system is not going to work, because these people are all in the same circles, bro, and they operate within the same system. So there's certain things they can and cannot do. There's certain things that they can and cannot say. And most of the time, because of the people that fund them, they can't say and do many things, because it's not in alignment with what their funders want and the various stakeholders within their political parties. So I don't know just yet how we'll go about what's the way forward in terms of that, in terms of addressing that. But it's just a reality that we're going to have to endure up until we actually decide to wake up and smell the coffee. We get into now the next segment of the show. So as I said before, we're going to have a sort of like word of the day with each and every podcast episode. And these words of the day, or foundational terms, I call them, are all terms that are going to be directed towards educating you and just putting you in the best position to be able to watch the news and understand just the basic terms that are typically thrown around when you are watching the news, be it you are watching political or economic. So this podcast, we are mostly on the economical and slightly political side of things, because economics is also influenced by the policies that are made by politicians. So we also want to know what is happening in that space as well. So these foundational terms, they are all geared towards making you understand news better, making you follow current affairs in terms of politics and economics, just follow them better, because I understand when I was starting out and starting to watch the news, there were terms that were thrown around that I didn't understand. Very simple one, inflation, way before I studied economics. A very simple term like inflation, I never understood it, and it was thrown around constantly. And various other terms that are thrown around that just affect how we take in news and what we make of them. So we start off this segment with a word called institutional memory, which refers to the collective understanding of how systems have worked or failed over time. Because if you want to fix a broken structure, you need to understand its history. So if we are trying to make Africa economically sovereign, so we have to go back down the history. Was there a time when Africa actually prospered? Yes. We saw it a lot in Egypt. I I don't know, a place called Kemet or something along those lines. So Africa, if you really look into it, we are not as dumb as the West actually makes us to be. We were at the forefront of many internet transformations, I guess. So we need to go down the history and see what went wrong and how can we learn from that moving forward. So that is institutional memory. And for us at Foundry, it's not just about history, it's about how power works. Every oppressive system has a memory, and it has every liberating system must build its own. For us here at Foundry, it's not just about history, it's about how power works. Because understand that every oppressive system has a memory. Every liberating system must build its own. And that's why we say we don't remember. If we don't remember, we can't rebuild, because what's the foundation? Where are we basing our decisions? For instance, I'll make an example. Recently, we just onboarded a client at Caprio Digital, and they don't have an established online presence. So we sort of like have to pioneer that and figure out how they're gonna go about starting off their online journey and being present online. So it deals with a lot of audits that we have to do just to get the baseline, and just produce baseline reports that will inform our decision making moving forward with the client. So it goes back to the history, but then I don't know of a system that doesn't have a history unless it's completely new. But I know for certain that there's always something connected to it, whatever it may be. There's always something connected to it that we can learn from, that can inform the very nature of the idea or the system that is now new. I'm certain that there's always something that'll help us to make better decisions, even if a system is new. And we say that there's no system that doesn't have a history. Everything, it has a history. So just looking at what a system was, how it worked, and how it can be improved. And the very reason that we come up with a system is to improve something, is to be more efficient and have processes be more streamlined. And I know for sure that it has a history, or rather, there's a problem that we are trying to solve. So just follow the problem and the trends surrounding the problem, and everything related to the problem that can inform how we move forward. So that is our word of the day: institutional memory. And then there is, like I mentioned in the previous episode, if you haven't watched that, please do watch that right now. Okay, finish this video first, and then you go over and watch that video. You can find that video on the channel. I'll link it somewhere there. I don't know if it's left or right, but I'll link it. Yeah, so going forward, I've just been, like I mentioned in that previous episode, that I've constantly just been trying to improve, and improving has to do with just the technical stuff, like the softwares that we use to record and edit the podcast episodes. That's the technical side of things. And then there's the side that deals with the content and the value that we provide. So I'd love to add value. What fulfills me is knowing that I dropped a podcast episode that teaches you something, that you can draw something from. So that's the value I want to add. As soon as a podcast episode doesn't do that, then I have failed. And as a result, I will not be fulfilled, and I will have sleepless nights trying to improve it. So that's what we've done also in terms of the content, just trying to ensure that we are adding value. And so now we have themed the rest of the year, or the rest of the year's podcast episodes, around business and agriculture. So we are theming it around that because business and agriculture is is the number one driver of Africa's GDP or Africa's net production. And when we say services, when we say businesses, there's a variety of industries that, or rather nature of business, be it it's a product, actual product, or manufacturing, or it's a service, intangible in its nature and all of that nice stuff. So I feel like if we can understand business and agriculture as young people, we'd go so far. Whether you are creative, whether you are whatever field you are in, but have an understanding of business and agriculture. You don't have to be in business to understand business, but just know how things work and how everything is interrelated, because everything is interrelated. I'll make an example. If you are a lawyer, you think that business has nothing to do with your entrepreneurial stuff. It has nothing to do with you, but it affects you somehow within what you do. Because now, let's say, yeah, you are a lawyer and a client comes to you. They are in business. I don't know what type of lawyer, but I think, let's say you are not a commercial lawyer, but a family lawyer. I don't know. Yeah, a family lawyer, but now the client comes through and they have an issue, and the client is a business person, and they might, in their speaking and the way their frame of reference, the pool from which they draw information from for their decision making is going to be influenced by their experiences. That is experiences in life, but mostly it's going to come from what they deal with each and every day. The examples that they make, for example, everything that I speak of, I will make examples of what I deal with every day, as long as it's suitable. So typically that'll be Caprio Digital, our digital marketing agency, and I'll draw from that. I'll draw examples from that, make examples based off of that, just to get my point across. So it's always nice to just have information, just sitting there, even if it's not urgent, or rather, even if you don't have to know it, but just have it there. You never know when it might come up and be useful in a conversation, perhaps at a braai, or trying to impress your in-laws or whatever. Just knowing that business fact, I think it'll be nice. So we are steering the conversation now towards business and agriculture, and there's a variety of aspects pertaining to business and agriculture that we are going to cover. So please stick around for that. Come back and watch the episodes, and let's learn together. Let's push towards this structural transformation that we are trying to achieve, and just make our continent better, make our people better and more equipped to go out there and prosper. Another thing that I'm also introducing is Foundry extensions. If you are part of the group that has watched the previous video on the channel, not the previous episode, not episode 6, but the previous video that we dropped sometime in the last week, that is Foundry extensions. That is where we are taking, because I'm trying to fit these episodes within less than 25 minutes, max 30 minutes. And typically I've been doing close to 30, and I just think I speak a lot, because there's no need for these episodes to be that long. Unless you have a different opinion, let me know in the comment section. So I've been trying to make them 25 to 30 minutes, and there's certain things that I can't really dive into depth in. For instance, as I was talking about the Tinubu thing in Nigeria, I've heard of Tinubu many times before, and how most Nigerians feel about them online. And he sounds like an interesting character that I want to conduct some more research into and just learn more of, and just make that a video, just make a video about Tinubu. Who is Tinubu, and what has his administration or administrations been like, because he's one of those people that refuse to let go of power. I think, if it's the same guy that I have in mind. So yeah, that is Foundry extensions. I just wanted to make that that announcement that we we also have that going on. And yeah, it'll just be a detailed breakdown of certain stuff that we cover in podcast episodes that we can't expand on the episode. So that is Foundry extensions, as well as other types of content. Maybe we see something and we are just motivated or inspired by it and just want to share it with you. So that'll be done through Foundry extensions. Because we can't wait since we are dropping twice a month now, we can't wait for thingy. We can't wait for the first Monday or the last Monday in order to share stuff with you, because sometimes we just want to share it on the spot. So Foundry extensions is now that vehicle for us to do so, just adding that value again, more beyond the podcast. I'd like to conclude this podcast episode with a question, and it's derived off of, I've mentioned systems a lot in this podcast episode. Let me know also what you think, what crosses your mind when you hear the word system, especially in the context of economics and politics, because what registers in my mind as soon as you mention system, like I said, you develop a system, or systems are there to improve the way we do things, whether it's efficiency or streamlining a process or just improving the way that you do things. That's a system. Building something that is, again, I'm going to make an example. What we've been doing at Caprio Digital as well, our digital marketing agency, has been developing systems, and those systems are also Foundry Lab systems, because now Foundry Lab is a client at Caprio Digital, and that's just the work that we do. We build brands, we build brands and set up strategies for businesses, small businesses in South Africa. And we won't say no to, international businesses, but still within the African continent. My focus is just on the African continent, so I'd preferably love to stay within that box or that market. So we've been developing systems so that Foundry Lab just runs like a well-oiled machine, just because there's a lot of repetitive tasks. So it's a matter of developing a system for making those repetitive tasks less tedious and automating them, building the systems to automate those processes that are repetitive. So that is a system. And then I thought of systems thinking as well, just looking at things from the greater whole or the larger whole, and just thinking in that way systematically. Without digressing, going back to the question that I wanted to leave you with is, given the various systems and how systems have failed us, especially here in the African continent, if power lives in systems, then who builds them? Who builds the systems within which power lies? Because if we are going to take back power as young people, which is one of the goals that we want with Foundry and Foundry Lab, is to take back the power. But if the power is found in the systems, how do we build systems? And right now, who's building them? And how do we improve? So again, institutional memory, going back to the systems that are in place, who has built them? What was the intent behind building those systems, and how have they performed over the years? And moving forward, because clearly certain things are not working and certain things are. So we want to look at those systems that are working. What are the commonalities? What is the common thread between systems that work and systems that don't? What makes a good system? What makes a bad system? What makes a system that can scale, meaning that it can start small, serving a handful of people, or serving a handful of whatever that system is built for, or wherever that system is built for? Can it start really small and we go, build it bigger and better, accommodating more people, or whatever the system is built for? just having much more productive capacity within that system. So think about that. Let me know what your answer is in the comment section, and let's keep the conversation going. Let not the conversation end as soon as the podcast episode ends. Let's continue thinking. Let's continue with the conversation. And speaking of continuing the conversation, we do have a Discord. We do have a place that we've built to facilitate these conversations. Please hit the but hit the link in the description box below. And yes, let's keep the conversation going. This has been the Foundry Lab. My name is Lula Machika. I am out of here.